When a global icon dies unexpectedly, the public mourns the unfulfilled potential. Their legacy is fixed at its peak, halting time for their image. In 1955, 24-year-old James Dean died in a high-speed collision at a California intersection. He passed just as Rebel Without a Cause established him as the face of youth rebellion. Dean was driving a Porsche 550 Spyder he called Little Bastard. Following the crash, parts salvaged from the car were sold to other drivers, leading to a series of accidents that birthed an urban legend about a cursed vehicle. In 1962, the timeline moved to Marilyn Monroe. The 36-year-old was found dead in her locked Brentwood bedroom from an acute barbiturate overdose, leaving a telephone receiver still gripped in her hand. These early losses proved that immense fame offers no biological protection. They established the archetype of the tragic icon, a figure defined as much by their sudden end as by their life's work. The public experience of grief changed in 1963, when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in an open-top motorcade in Dallas, Texas. Following the shooting, Jackie Kennedy refused to change out of her pink Chanel suit, which was covered in her husband's blood. She wore the stained garment through the return flight to Washington to force the public to see the reality of the violence. In 1980, John Lennon was murdered outside his New York apartment building. He was returning from a recording studio when he was shot 4 times in the back, ending his career during a period of creative renewal. Earlier that afternoon, Lennon had paused outside the building to sign an album for the man who would later return with a revolver. These deaths shifted the nature of mourning. The loss of a sitting president and a global musical voice turned private sadness into a shared experience of collective trauma. In 1984, Marvin Gaye was shot and killed inside his parents' home. The shooter was his own father, who opened fire during a physical confrontation. Gaye died 1 day before his 45th birthday. He was killed with the same Smith & Wesson revolver he had given his father as a Christmas gift for home protection. In 1994, Kurt Cobain died by suicide in a greenhouse at his Seattle residence. He was 27 years old and had spent years struggling with severe heroin addiction and depression. Cobain left a suicide note addressed to a childhood friend. He used a red pen to pin the paper into the potting soil of a flower box, leaving the message to be found by an electrician 3 days later. These events highlight the isolation that often accompanies extreme fame. Behind closed doors, personal relationships and mental health can deteriorate, even as the public image remains intact. In 1996, the timeline moved to the Las Vegas Strip. Tupac Shakur was killed in a drive-by shooting while sitting in the passenger seat of a vehicle stopped at a red light. Although the shooting occurred at a busy intersection surrounded by witnesses and security cameras, no arrests were ever made. The murder remains officially unsolved. In 1997, Princess Diana died following a car crash in a Paris tunnel. She was attempting to flee paparazzi photographers when the vehicle struck a concrete pillar at high speed. As Diana lay dying in the wreckage, the pursuing photographers continued to take flash photographs of the scene. Emergency responders arrived to find the tunnel illuminated by camera flashes rather than people rendering aid. The images from the crash sparked international debates regarding media ethics. This event led to changes in privacy laws and a reassessment of how the public consumes celebrity imagery. In 2008, Heath Ledger died from an accidental overdose of 6 different prescription medications. He was 28 years old and had been using the drugs to treat a respiratory infection and chronic insomnia. Ledger died 6 months before the release of The Dark Knight. He never saw the critical reaction to his performance as the Joker, which earned him a posthumous Academy Award. In 2003, Steve Jobs was diagnosed with a treatable form of pancreatic cancer. Despite medical advice, he refused surgery for 9 months, opting instead for alternative therapies and dietary changes. By the time Jobs agreed to the surgery in 2004, the cancer had spread to his liver. He later expressed regret over the decision to delay the procedure that likely would have saved his life. These deaths demonstrate that talent and intellect are subject to the same biological limitations as anyone else. Even visionary figures are ultimately bound by the rules of human health. In 2013, Paul Walker was killed in a high-speed car crash in California. He was a passenger in a Porsche that struck a tree and a light pole while traveling nearly double the speed limit. In 2014, Robin Williams died by suicide at his home. While the public assumed the cause was depression, the subsequent investigation revealed a different medical reality. The autopsy found that Williams had one of the most severe cases of Lewy body dementia pathologists had ever recorded. He had been suffering from undiagnosed hallucinations and tremors caused by the progressive neurological disease. In 2020, Kobe Bryant and 8 others died when their helicopter crashed into a hillside in Calabasas. The aircraft had entered thick morning fog, which reduced visibility to near zero. The crash was caused by spatial disorientation, where a pilot loses visual references and cannot determine the aircraft's position. Believing he was climbing to escape the fog, the helicopter was actually banking steeply and descending at high speed toward the terrain. When a life of this magnitude is cut short, the public narrative stops. We are left with the record of what was achieved and the silence of the years that never came.